Welcome back, you filthy exiles. So I have a build update too, and yes, this now can face tank Uber Elder Shaper beams. It's pretty tanky. Now, as far as delve wise, it's just like steadily pushing down. It's not good at taking Crystal Kings out beyond like 350 depth. It can do them, just takes a little while. But and basically the best way to do it is just activate all the pods on the outside and then let him go into bullet mode because he's not going to be able to kill you. It's not like immortal. You do die from time to time. There are just things that breach defenses. Mainly it's around physical damage, but it pretty well mitigates it. Budget-wise now, we're probably at somewhere in the vicinity of like the 60 to 80 div mark. Some major changes that I've made is I switched out punishment and moved to flammability and elemental weakness. This just meant you had more like front side damage instead of waiting for punishment to kick in, so it kills bosses a lot quicker. I did switch out my ring, and I did get a mirrored ring with 31% damage taken recouped as life. So basically it's a Defiance of Destiny without being a Defiance of Destiny. This also gave me like increased regeneration from the fire resist and like total max health, so it was pretty damn good. And it also has reduced duration of any ailments that it might be on me as well, which is really good for taking on ultimatums. Now outside of that, we didn't really change boots, didn't really change anything else, didn't change gloves, didn't change this, but we did add a Progenesis into the build, which is what pushes the price up. These are like 45 div or so. And I did test between Bottled Faith and Taste of Hate, and Taste of Hate is significantly better because of the conversion. So it's to basically fire and lightning damage from hits taken as cold, and then physical damage, you get the gist. Anyway, it just feels way better than Bottled Faith, but play around with it and see how your build feels and works. You could put Bottled Faith in it, it's going to throttle your damage up, but you might be more susceptible to taking damage as a result as well. So a few other changes in the build. I did get all my gems up to like level 21, at least the main one being Firestorm, so this is now level 27. I did get all my Awakened gems into my build, so I got rid of like dot gems and stuff. I found like having straight on hit gems were way better. Basically, you're just hitting with flat elemental damage. And then I did get a level 4 in power, so I had a 100 div ring drop in Ritual, and I've been making just constant bank out of Ultimatum, Delve, and Ritual, and I think we're still sitting on like 38 div in the cache, so we're making okay currency. And then outside of that, I have a Val Breach just chilling here, so you got to get Corrupted Souls up to be able to use it, but it's good for boss fights, so this is where you're like doing Delirium. I haven't done Delirium yet or tested it on Kosis, but I think at this stage it would be able to do level 15 Kosis, so it should be pretty fine for that. Outside of that, I think we cap up with everything up at like nearly 4,000 life regeneration per second, and then we've got Petrified Blood plus Progenesis on top, so we are chonky. All my flasks are now fixed up as well, so I have 45% increased armor, and I've got charges when getting hit. And I also have Bleeding Corrupted Blood immunity now on my armor flask, which isn't necessarily ideal, but it was going to get a lot more expensive to put it on something in my jewels and whatnot, so it was easy to do that. Also, in the final endgame tree, I now currently have Diodre's, Diodre, whatever it is, Gluttony, which gives me Cull, so I'm able to cull bosses and stuff, which definitely helps when mapping. So it pretty well blasts maps now. It's like if you have like problems with your hands or like medical issues with your shoulder and stuff like that, this build is pretty much there for you. Like it's going to play the game for you. And obviously you can take stuff down like Uber Elder. Can it do Maven? I'm not sure. It's not very good at stuff like Maven. Needs way more DPS, or you just got to get better at the Maven game to be able to do it, but it can take everything else out pretty easily. And then obviously the other thing which I added into the build, which gave me a big boost to life regeneration and damage, was the Anger and Vitality Watcher's Eye, which gives me like an extra 400 to 500 life regeneration per second as well, which is pretty good. And then yeah, like that was pretty much about it. Like Cluster Jewels completed, just got to get Smoking Remains when I level up. And overall, like everything else feels pretty optimized. It's just a case of leveling the build up a little further. And we'll take it into Mage Blood territory. I think someone asked me how to put a Mage Blood on it. Like, you're going to get rid of Taste of Hate and then just put an armor flask on with additional armor and then anything else you might need. So, you know, Quicksilver, or you could have like the Quartz Flask up 100% of the time and have 100% phase. which would be really good for delving. I think this, as in its current state, will hit 1,000 delve pretty easily. Like, it's really bloody tanky. Like, it's super tanky. Probably one of the tankiest characters. And to be honest with you, like, I'm probably going to look at making Shield Crush run with Petrified Blood moving forwards, because it feels way better than armor. Just like, yeah. So other questions I've had about it, if you are dying a little bit more than you should be, then running like armor and stuff like that will fix the problem. More armor, you want at least like 30,000 armor. In this case, I have a chest here which is crafted. It was the same one in the last video, so it gave me everything I needed, and then like damage taken as recouped as life, and then 10 fizz damage taken as fire damage, because you want to try and convert over. Now you could get rid of the Vol's vision, but you would need a helm that has a fair bit of life regeneration, flat health, but it is doable, and you could get it going even tankier if you had fizz converted to fire, which you can still craft on helms, or you can get the implicit force, so that's also an option as well, and this might very well be something that I do as well, but this definitely does help with the light radius. But yeah, that's just an option. I probably will play around with replacing this, and I do want to get rid of the Dark Seer. I don't like that I'm at the mercy of this helm to not be able to run corrupted shields and stuff like that. So yeah, anyway, where it is, and the belt needs to be changed too. We'll probably switch that to something better and then switch it to Mage Blood eventually, something with a lot more life regeneration. But yeah, it's really hard to get past those stats. Are pretty good. The other thing I also did was I switched out my my immutable force. So I got an 827%, which was like 1 div. And I also got a blood notch, which was about 1.5 div at 55%. It caps out at 60%. So yeah, I did switch that in, and that actually did make the build feel even tankier because I was regenerating way more life. I don't generally die in simulacrums now, not sims, ultimatums now. The only way I really die is if you pick bad mods in the ultimatum. And yes, if anyone's asking, will you do a video on ultimatum? I will now, because I understand the mechanic pretty thoroughly. That'll probably be in tomorrow night, maybe. I'm thinking maybe the night, maybe Tuesday night. Anyway, we'll see how we go. Anyway, let's get this video out and then go from there. Anyway, let's talk about the configs and go through the build in a bit more detail in the PoB, and then we'll just run through the gear and stuff like that. Obviously, you can see in the B-roll, it's dropping T17s as well, so yeah, this can farm T17 maps if you want to farm T17s. It's totally competent. So probably one of the few Firestorm builds that can. But yeah, anyway, let's get into the video. Okay, so first of all, configs. So a bit of a change from my usual in most of my builds. So we are running Soul of Arakali in this setup. And the reason why is, like, if you want to take stuff like Shaper and things like that, you really need to run Soul of Arakali. And it gives you like 20% increased life recovery rate if you stop taking dot recently. So if corrupted blood hits you, you can recover really quickly. And anything else like Burning Ground, it's just really good. Solar Growth cool as well. The reason why I take this is less so for the fizz damage reduction, like that definitely does help. Mainly for the enemies that attack you have 8% reduced attack speed if they've attacked recently. And this stops the amount of hits going into you, which would break your stun recovery, which is really useful. So it works quite well. Time spent stationary is 5 seconds. And the reason why is because we got Naisha's Patience, and also we run Inexorable as well. So yep, that's a thing. We're on low life because we are low life. We're under 50% HP all the time, so we're low lifing. Endurance charges, we generate that from Inexorable in the tree. I think I had that question too, so yeah. Adrenaline comes from our boots. So if we have a look at the boots, we have Annihilation's Approach, and we get Adrenaline from approaching flames or being flame touched. And then beyond that, have we been stunned recently? Yes. Have we been hit recently? Yes, we're always getting hit. If we've stopped taking dot recently, thanks to Arakali, we can tick that on, and we go up to, I think, 4,000. Yeah. So we go up to 4,000 recovery, or 3,200 after our RF comes off. Otherwise, we sit at 2,600, so we're pretty tanky. Flame Wall is generally up. Flame Wall is always up, which is really good. Here's the enemy curse. We have dual curse, and then we have blind as well. Now, in relation to blind, this is coming from the Dark Seer. So basically, enemies blinded, or 10% global chance for blind on enemies on hit. Now, I'm not 100% sure if this applies to the spell on hit, but I suspect that it does, so I'm going to leave it in there anyway. Now, beyond that, enemies are burning, enemies are ignited. That's pretty much go figure. We're running like 20 bajillion fire skills. I do have shocked. This is coming from overshock on our blazing salvo configuration, or overcharge, sorry. So we have 50% chance to shock when we hit. Now I've put it at 15% because I'm not sure that it's like proccing consistently. But anyway, we'll try and figure that out as well when I try and get a crafted one into the build as well to get rid of the Darkseer. And then beyond that, we have fire exposure and basically everything, including our gloves and whatnot. And then finally, we have unnerved. Now, this is coming from the controlled destruction setup in Firestorm. So we get a 10% chance to proc unnerved, or to unnerve enemies for 4 seconds on hit with our spells. So basically, that's where that's coming from, and that increases our damage just a touch as well by like nearly 250 to 300,000. Obviously, this is Guardian and Pinnacle boss damage, so it does a lot more damage. Now, if you can get Herald of Ash in the build, it's going to put you at a significant advantage. Covered in Ash in the build, or Ash. And there's a few ways that you could do this. You could either run the ring that does it. Otherwise, if we can try and find a way to get the Warcry in, then I'm going to try and do that. So, which is Infernal Cry. But we'll see how we go. It's going to take some tinkering to get it to work. Anyway, this is basically where the PoB is at config-wise. Let's get into the gearing. Vision, the reason why is we get a pretty significant amount of increased maximum life and increased life regeneration at 400 base if we don't have any corrupted gear. So if you do have corrupted gear in your build and you're wondering why you're not getting the benefits of it, remove the corrupted gear and it should fix the problem. So we still use the Darkseer. This just gives us a ton of really good attributes, included +2 to spell skill gems, which is really useful. And then the chest piece, we have a crafted chest piece. So now the PoB allows these to go through the last update, fix this problem. So don't use the chest that I had in the previous PoB. Use this chest, it's way better. So I use All's Uprising as well with an anoint for Whispering Doom, and this gives me the ability to reserve anger with no reservation, which is really useful. So I'm able to put anger into the build and get a lot more damage. And then obviously a Rise of the Phoenix Shield. If you can get a max roll on the life roll, that's the preference. This gives you basically all these really good attributes if we're on low life, which we are. And then basically a ton of max capped resistance as well as regeneration. Now, rings have changed. The Valerium is still the same, but the second ring is significantly different. So basically the main goal on this was to try and get negative attributes that aren't bad, and in compromise for that, get damage taken recouped as life as high as we possibly could. In this case, it's equivalent to Defiance of Destiny levels of recoup, which makes me severely tanky. Now, if you can't get this, any amount of recoup is going to be good. Like 12% to something between 12 and 20% is going to be really good. Or even 10% is going to be better than nothing. But definitely this is a game changer for this build. Makes it significantly more tanky than it ever was before. Gloves, I haven't changed the gloves. I need to change the gloves. They're not that great, but they're also not bad either. But the big issue here is the dexterity and the intelligence roll. It really needs it, thirsts for it almost. The build is not very dexterous and it's a little bit dumb. And then the belt, I still haven't changed it. Just a lot of life, a lot of resistance, a lot of chaos resistance, and a lot of life regeneration. Pretty much the best belt I've got at the moment, but it could be way better. And then finally, Annihilation's approach, which gives us cannot be chilled, cannot be frozen, we can't be ignited. The only thing we can be is shocked, and we can fix that through different means. But we also get Flame Touch, which gives us adrenaline, and we do a ton of damage with Flame Touch, which is a aura. If I could click Control, we get Approaching Flames, which then allows us to have Flame Touched. And then flask-wise, I've got a Progenesis, so if you can't afford a Progenesis, you don't need it in the build, but to push it to where I'm pushing it to, you will eventually need to get it. And then Ruby Flask, in this case, I've got gain 3 charges with armor during effect, which is pretty cheap actually. It's like 70 chaos or something like that. And then Granite Flask with, again, gain 3 charges when you're hit, and then Corrupted Blood immunity. So this is basically how we get around having to have Corrupted Blood immunity in the build. I've also got a Quartz Flask because I like delving, and I'm playing Ultimatum, so I want to be able to move around things. And I've just got increased movement speed, but you can put anything you want on this. And then finally, Taste of Hate. So I did run, as I said, Bottle of Faith versus Taste of Hate. I prefer Taste of Hate, feels better. But since I've made some other changes, I haven't really tried Bottle of Faith. So potentially it could be good. It is going to increase your damage and your regeneration. But, you know, up to you guys. You can play around with it in the POBs or whatnot. It just depends on how you like playing. This feels good for me without it. But if you want to play with it, definitely do it. And that's basically it for the gearing. Not an overly complex build, but yeah, pretty straightforward. Okay, so for gem setups, we've got Custom Stunned and Overcharge and Flame Wall and Blazing Salvo in the helm. In the Darkseer, we've switched out Punishment. We've put in Flammability and Elemental Weakness and Custom Stunned in the Darkseer. Then in our shield, we've got Vitality, Righteous Fire, and Petrified Blood. And these don't need to be linked. And then in the chest, we made some pretty big changes. So we got Firestorm, in this case level 21 and 20% quality Firestorm, which gets up to 20 level 20 gem, level 27, sorry. We have Awaken Elemental Focus. This gives us +1 to elemental skill gems, which affects Firestorm. And then we have Awaken Control Destruction, which gives us Unnerve. We have Empower level 4. These are like 6 div, but level 3 is fine if you're still gearing up. Custom Stunned, obviously, and I have a 2120 gem for this, which is surprisingly cheap. Not as popular of a build as what it has been, but I don't know why, because it's still really powerful and can delve like a beast. And then Awakened Fire Penetration, which is giving us another 10% increased fire exposure as well. Then in my gloves, I've got Purifying Flame, Cast When Stun, Molten Shell, and I use Flame Surge of Combusting now. Someone mentioned this in the comments, and I thought to try it out, and it does feel better. The big thing is Burning Ground deals 45% of fire damage per second of inflicted ignite. I don't know if that's good or bad. Seems to be okay on the PoB. I don't think it really does a huge sort of thing. And the other thing here is I think it does have a bigger area of effect length, so it does lash out for a longer distance, which makes it more useful because it is somewhat of a utility skill. Then in the boots, I've got Anger with Flame Dash. And obviously, Anger has no reservation because it's attached to our All's Uprising, so Anger has no reservation. And then we run Eternal Blessing and Purity of Fire. So to put into context here, I think there was some comments about people didn't fully understand what Eternal Blessing does. Is it reserves the... it normally would work where you can reserve one aura with no mana cost, right? But it means that you can only have one aura. That denomination is specifically in relation to mana reservation, right? So if you're reserving auras against life, that effect doesn't apply to life reserved auras, which means you can run a free aura and then just keep reserving more auras against your life pool, as you can see here, without any implication, which means I have 2 free auras based on my All's Uprising and my Purity of Fire. And what this means to me too is there's opportunities where using this configuration could be really good for slam builds and really good for things like Shield Crush or other different melee skills or other like spellcasting skills, for example. So it's definitely something I'm going to try out more moving forwards as a build archetype. But for now, this works really well, and that's it for the gem setups. Okay, so skill tree. So there's no real major changes in here, so just to talk it through. So basically we come down, I did switch out the nodes in here and I moved them from the life nodes to the strength nodes, which were in my endgame tree. I do have a tattoo in here for increased fire damage. Wherever you can fit tattoos, I'd recommend doing it because there's some really good things that you can do with tattoos. We come and get Heart of the Warrior. We come down, we want to have Unfaltering, and then we also want to have the Stun Mastery where we basically can't take crits. Bloodless, then into 30 plus life. Blood Magic up into Inexorable, and then we want 20% armor, and this grows to 100% if we've been stationary for 5 seconds or so. Juggernaut, we've got our dual setups, Stamina, which gives us Endurance Charge plus the regeneration, and Barbarism up into Hardy, and then we also want to have the 50 life per second on this. Now in our large cluster, we want Cremator, Widespread Destruction, and Smoking Remains, but you could play with this, and if you want, you could get some Leech into this, which would make it even better. And then, which would be like Doriani's something from memory. And then I do run Diodre's Gluttony, which gives me Cull against cursed enemies. And because I'm always cursing enemies, I'm always culling enemies, which is really good on boss fights that drag out for a bit. And then Nature's Patience as well, which we're standing still all the time, so we might as well use it. It's pretty good. I know people hate the feel of it, but yeah, it's pretty good. Now, it doesn't work with Unstoppable, because Unstoppable, if if you use the Forbidden Flesh and Flame, will mean that you cannot be stunned, and cannot be stunned will brick this build. And then we come up and we get Devotion, up into Holy Dominion, into Discipline and Discipline and Training, and Sanctity. We also then pick up the dual socket here and the endurance charge and then divine judgment. And eventually we want to go down and grab divine fury as well. The agnostic, you will need the agnostic. And the reason why is this makes it so that your energy shield is 0 all the time. Even though we have items that give us energy shield, you could probably work around this, but it really needs, ES needs to be 0 for this to work. And then the reason for that is the Valerium, right? So stun threshold is based on energy shield instead of life. And what that means is then basically if you've got no ES, then your stun threshold is 0, which means you can always be stunned constantly. And then we have Purity of Flesh coming down here. Holy Fire with the regenerate 1 life per second for each uncapped 1 fire res. So, yep. Then we come down and get Agility and Elemental Overload because we just want to like front load flat elemental damage. And then finally we come up and get Heart of the Flame, Breath of Flames. We want the critical strikes to not inherently ignite, but you get 100% increased flat damage against ignited enemies, and we ignite everything, so yep. Then Cruel Preparations into Infused Flesh, and we need this life recoup effects instead occur over 3 seconds. This synergizes with Petrified Blood. And then basically I've got a Watcher's Eye in this setup now, which gives me increased fire damage with Anger and increased life recovery with Vitality, which makes me super, super tanky. Now, Ascendancies haven't been changed, pardon me. So we still go up to Cleansing Waters, into Valako's, into Hinakora's Death Fury. I just like saying Hinakora's Death Fury because it's really cool. And then into Remiko's Sun's Light. And that's it for the Ascendancies. And that's it for the pathing tree. It's not like crazy. This will all be in the description below. I'm trying to do some different video camera angle. This will be in the description below. So yeah, you'll be able to check the PoB out and do whatever you need to do to align it up. You do need to level the build up. I've had some people that have been like, oh, the build's not working. It's like level 80. Yep, the predicated notion of being like level 90 is really important because you'll be missing a heap of nodes. The other thing for leveling this build, just use RF. RF is like super easy. You could use a Pox leveling build or just like slap RF on. I switched to this pretty quickly, but I wouldn't recommend doing that. Just level up with RF for a little while until you're comfortable with the build and then start making the switch over. You could even run it hybrid with RF and then use RF to load out a little bit of damage. It's up to you how you want to configure it. You don't have to do it exactly the way that I've done it here. Okay, so anyway, I hope this sort of gives you some more guidance on where to take the build and you can see what it can do and what it can't do. At this stage, it basically does everything except like severe bossing. But even then, like, you know, you can still take down Uber Elder and everything else. So you could do Void Stones with it and all sorts of stuff. It's probably actually a really good build to learn a lot of boss mechanics with because it is pretty forgiving where you can get punched in the face really hard with this build and get back up or not even flinch. It's definitely a lot better than playing bow builds, I'll give it that. Now, price-wise, you know, you're going to need, to get it to this point, you're going to need like a solid 80 div, or you just keep progressing it. If you haven't got that, it'll be 45 to 50 without Progenesis, and then just, you know, farm up and save for Progenesis, and you can do that in various different ways. You can either follow my Dell videos on how to do that, and just use Azurite farming and fossil farming, or potentially you could go and you could smash Ultimatum with the build and make currency out of Ultimatum, and rituals are really good as well. I have done the King in the Mist. I just like face tanked him. I didn't even move and it just, everything dies. But yeah, anyway, overall the build's really good, solid. I'm enjoying it. It's really good on laptops and bad internet links, which is what I've been dealing with for the last few days and or last couple of weeks, last week. But yeah, anyway, if you like this type of video, don't forget to like and sub to the channel. Don't forget to follow the Twitch. And I don't think I need to do like a full, like a third update for this one. This is pretty much it. But eventually I'll farm a Mage Blood and then, yeah, we'll revise different things in the builds and take it from there. But I might do a final update. But anyway, we'll see how we go. All right. Anyway, I'll see you guys later and have a safe one.